everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bots and Billables, where we discuss the future of the legal market and how technology innovation impacts all of our work. And today, very special pleasure, because I have a conversation with Mark Cohen. So there are a few people in the legal market that do not need an introduction, and Mark is definitely one of them. But for those of you who are new to the scene and who may have not met Mark, I want to say a quick word and give a try to actually sum up your background to this. So you started as a U.S. district attorney. You then became a lawyer, later a partner, a managing partner of a big U.S. firm. You then left that firm. You set shop. You built up your own law firm. You did that for 14 years. I heard, I saw, you told me. And then later you did not take that for granted. You started again, building a knowledge management company, and then you built the maybe most famous company of the last 30 years in legal tech, which is ClearSpy, that you ran for 8 years, I think. The company got acquired, and is famous for doing something incredibly new with linking innovation and tech to the legal market. And when you sold, this was, I think, 2014, and then you became a distinguished voice. You are a lecturer, you are a fellow, you are close with numerous academic institutions that we all know, Northwestern, Singapore. You are a regular writer for Forbes now and for The Economist. So, Mark, you are one of the voices that people listen to because you've seen it all. I think if we sum this up, we are at 40 years, almost 35 years of seeing the changing scene in the legal market. And what is most interesting about this is there were hypes. There were actual changes, material changes to the legal scene through the obvious ones, the internet, the rise of the digital libraries in the 1990s. Then you had the change in the legal service delivery through alternative service models. You actively build one. And then the tech comes in the 2010s with wave number one. Then you have legal automation. You have all the new approaches to project management, the human factor. And now the biggest wave of all hits with Gen AI, and the world is rallying around this and asks, how does a text-based technology change a text-based profession? And I would have expected you, Mark, to now sit back and be there been there, done that, got the t-shirt, you all relax. Yes, you're not. You're actually quite convinced that there is change coming now. And this is why I want to have the conversation with you, Mark. Why do you think this time is actually mattering?
First of all, Michael, thank you very much for the very generous introduction. And the question of why now, I think I have to go to literature, Michael, and Ernest Hemingway. And one of his famous lines from For Whom the Bell Tolls was one of the key characters in the novel was asked, how is it that you went bankrupt? And he said, very gradually and then very suddenly. I think that this is really very apt for describing the legal industry. It has been very gradually, probably since, I would say, the beginning of the millennium. One could argue in terms of when the start date is, but I think that let's just say in round numbers, 25 to 30 years, the change has been gradual. But all of a sudden, I think really with the late 2022 release of ChatGPT and the beta version and the astonishing global response, because this was not just in one market, this was across the globe. I think that really was the starting point for people beginning to realize that maybe things are going to accelerate, and indeed is better than anyone they have. So I think that would be a very short answer to a very broad, nuanced question of why now. But I would say in terms of, on a personal note, why I'm sticking around, as you suggest, that after being in this game for almost 40, close to 50 years, I've been waiting for this moment. Because it's not just, of course, the technology that's changing, but it's everything about it. And one thing that I think, and I'm sure we'll get into, that has got to change is the mindset. That people have to recognize that this is really a fundamental change that goes way beyond the legal sector, way beyond even business itself. It's raising some very existential questions about what it is to be human in the age of AI and soon quantum computing and all these other technologies that are really, I think, changing life.
I mean, thank you for this. When you speak to big law, I think I want to talk to you also, especially about big law, because you're incredibly savvy about this. And I think this is one of the biggest impact areas we're all interested about, like attorney-client relationship in the highest stakes areas, basically. You describe in a recent Forbes article that I've actually quoted before because I found it so interesting, and many people have many opinions about it, and actually I think you have many fans that agree with you. You describe how the pyramid business model of a law firm gets impacted or at least threatened by the change in UI because of efficiency change in the ratio. Can you walk me through a little bit like how the model works, what its issues are today, and how this now gets impacted by Gen AI? It's assumed for somebody who knows how a law firm roughly works, but isn't familiar with the intricate details of like how you set it up. People have a feeling about efficiency changing a law firm, but people are also like, you save time, you can save some bottom line, you're less lawyers, maybe your billables will go up a little bit, right? People so incredibly personally afraid, honestly.
So let me start by answering your question this way. Let's talk about the structure. All large corporate law firms have a similar structure, and that is a partnership. And the partnership structure is in large part the byproduct of legal regulation that has legal self-regulation that has successfully said that basically, with some exceptions in some jurisdictions, it's lawyers and only lawyers who have the controlling interest in law firms. And they set up these partnerships. And the partnerships in most jurisdictions have to divide their profits up on an annual basis. This creates a kind of a short-term mindset. Unlike corporations who are investing a lot of money, as much as 10%, sometimes more, in research and development planning for the future, law firms don't do that. Their structure doesn't provide for it. And therefore, we get to the economic model, which is driven by the partnership structure. And the economic model is one that basically has been hierarchical. It has been based on input, that is hours billed, as opposed to output, which is the typical metric for business, results obtained, value to the client, etc. And the pyramidal model to which you were referring, if you think of it in terms of large phalanxes of associates or younger lawyers, have historically billed a tremendous number of hours, varying degrees of value to clients. But between younger lawyers, mid-tier lawyers, and even some more experienced lawyers who are not equity partners, and I use the word equity in law, is very different than equity in a corporation. And a corporation is, particularly in a publicly traded one, have a long-term interest in the economic sustainability and success of the corporation. In law firms, that doesn't exist. It's a year-to-year thing. And so as a result of this, I think it is very much a future is now mindset. And as long as the last year or years have been successful, the model continues. And remarkably, and this is the thing, Michael, I think that is unusual about the legal industry as opposed to others, you'd say if in-house departments are under this pressure, and if they are getting most of their services from law firms, yes, some work is migrating away from law firms in-house, but why aren't they putting more pressure on? And that's a really good question. And I think the answer to that question is a couple of things. One, so many in-house lawyers themselves came from law firms. So this is their orientation. This is their mindset. They're just wearing a different uniform now and operating under a slightly different model and economics. But the other thing is, I think that the marketplace has never really had a scalable alternative. Or put it another way, a law firm that has operated dramatically differently than the monolithic model of large corporate law firms. To come to the issue of AI and why is this time different? And let's make no mistake about it. My dear friend Richard Susskind and I spend a lot of time talking about how wrong we were in trying to predict when the change would come, and all these things that law has been able to withstand: the global financial crisis, the pandemic, technological changes. Why is this time different? Which is a very fair question to ask. And I think the difference is because AI is now really challenging the hegemony, the long-standing hegemony, not just of lawyers, but of everyone who is in the expert class. And I don't have to tell you, and I'm sure most of your audience, daily you're reading about how AI is outperforming the very best medical diagnosticians. It's outperforming architects in design. It is outperforming certainly a lot of lawyers. And so I think that this is really the first time, particularly those lawyers who are not to the elite status of trusted advisors. Very bluntly, I wouldn't have mentioned it, but you did. The kind of work that I did where they're really coming to you not just on a specific matter and not for tactical reasons, but rather on a portfolio basis for strategic reasons. You're really operating more as a business person leveraging your legal experience than you are just delivering a legal opinion. And that's a very small segment of the legal world. It may be somewhere you could argue the percentages, but I would put it significantly less than 5%. And so for the other 95, let's call it, percent, AI is either going to eat into a lot of the things that they did, which you could argue probably they shouldn't have been doing in the first instance, or it's going to wholesale in the lower, younger people, it's going to wholesale, I think, wipe out a lot of what they're doing. Now, this is going to have dramatic impact on the economics, because to put it in blunt terms for your audience, let's say that a partner takes out $100. Probably $50 of that 100 at most is derived from their own work and the profit that they make on the work that they themselves are actually doing. The remaining 50%, and you could argue in some instances even more, is derived from the profit that they make from the people in the pyramid who are not equity partners. So imagine now all of a sudden someone who is making, let's just say, $1 million a year is now making $500,000 a year. And already you've got a situation where partners are very peripatetic and they move from firm to firm, generally not so much because the firms are so different from one another, but rather that one firm is economically stronger than the others. And you're seeing that happen, and it's been happening for the last 30 years. It's now beginning to accelerate. So this is going to cause, I think, a destabilization. This is going to cause a lot of firms, I think, to be in financial straits. It's going to be a real challenge to the model, which we've never seen before.
I agree with you on many terms. There are some areas where my feeling is that the system is more rigid and people are more versatile in firms sometimes, and they almost see it coming. And I see that it's the law firms that are able to equip themselves first with every tool in the shed to be prepared, almost like faster than their clients, faster than any other contributor in the legal market. And it's the bigger the firm, the more like tech expertise people are currently adding to be ready when things actually change. My observation, however, is that many of those things that people are currently doing are hitting an almost individual efficiency point. They're like helping people to learn. It's the individual lawyer and the contributor that basically gets a little bit faster, maybe better in drafting an argument, summarizing an email, or comparing to documents. But it's not that there's like this big giant request that now is being shelved in half, slashed in half, or cut or reduced because the client says, we use AI for this, we do this. we see those projects, like these projects exist, like I see them once a week almost. But these are still part of the bigger consulting thing, and you can almost see how the law firms are able to then also provide different expertise and provide more consultants to that whole thing, while the clients currently are just asking for a reduced price just because law firms probably use AI. And my observation is a little bit that people want the lawyers to change something, and the lawyers are equipping themselves in technology, but don't see the pressure translating in an actual change. So, if I understand you correctly, is your change also coming from one law firm eating into other law firms' revenue because they're faster in doing that? Is there like a horizontal redistribution of the market? Or is it really a replacement of the legal services by other players in the market? Clients self-serving, other providers also offering services? So where is the gold going, basically? Is it outcompeted, or is it eaten up by other people?
That's a great question. I think that what you're seeing is you are beginning to see, and you have for the last 10 or so years, that a very small cadre of maybe 20 global law firms who are financially distancing themselves from the pack. And it's not just that they are making more money, but it's also the kind of work that they're doing. They are doing this bet the company cases. They are doing the cases that are far more price insensitive, therefore have far greater value to the clients than other matters. Okay, so let's put that small group to the corner for a minute. But as for everyone else, I think there is a growing recognition that the work, though lawyers like to think it's bespoke, it's sophisticated, it's very important, the reality of it is that from the client perspective, it is not so important. And so I think those are the firms that are going to experience in the first instance the greatest pressure. And by the way, a lot of the key partners, particularly the rainmakers in the other 80%, are going to be looking to join the 20 or so firms that are doing the sexier work and that are also making more money. So I think you've got a certain separation that has emerged. I think you also have the issue of, to answer your question, I think what is going to happen is that you are going to see new providers out there. And one of the things that I think has to be addressed is this is not just a matter, as Michael as well or better than I do. AI is not just a driver of efficiency. AI is an enabler of new models and new ways of doing things that are, I think, going to be able to allow for a reinvention and a reimagination, not just engrafting it onto existing structures and economic models. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see new models coming in that are going to be AI native legal providers of legal products and services, and I underscore products and services. And I think that those are going to have corporate structures. And I think the other thing is it's not enough just to fix, in quotes, the law firm challenge, but there also has to be a reimagination of the legal in-house functions. And the two have to be aligned, because I can tell you as a large consumer of legal services, I never cared whether it was the in-house team that solved the problem or a law firm team or somebody else. I just wanted the problem solved. And I wanted them to work in an integrated fashion, not as in a siloed way. That's what's going to create value for me on the business side. And again, I just end this soliloquy by saying that I've long believed that the legal industry looks too much at itself. If it wants to know where its future is, it should look to its clients, which is business. And what is business doing? And business increasingly is reinventing itself through integration and cross-functional collaboration. This is what I think the new look of the legal industry is going to be when we emerge. It's not going to be as we knew it It's going to be something very different. And one more thing. Yes, it's great to have all the tools in the shed, but I think that unless you have a mindset and a culture of innovation and something that is ready to embrace the larger notion of true transformation, not just increased efficiency, I think you're kidding yourself. And I think even the top 20 firms, even they are going to start looking at some structural options. I happen to know that for a fact without naming names.
Yeah. So look, we could spend all day talking about this. The three things you're saying, just double clicking on the first one, when you say we have to basically look at areas where people have new products and services emerging enabled through AI. And this may come from law firms, but this may also come from other providers. Who do you see in the forefront of doing this? Is this coming from the area of ALSPs or people that are already in the quadrant of the, let's say, less betting the farm, high stakes litigation work, but more in the high frequency, low risk quadrant? Is this coming from new firms? You mentioned AI native units where basically people rebuild a law from scratch, which, by the way, is much faster and probably more likely than a big law firm changing. I don't know, but that's just me.
Right.
I think you're much faster off in just like rebuilding that brand from scratch and basically without repurposing people that you had in your units before. I mean, a huge org that spans maybe different continent. I'm not sure how easy and fast this can be. So we have new entrants to the market, you say. Where should we look? What are the canaries in the coal mine of success of that new generation?
Great question. Okay, let me start by saying, with all due respect to ALSPs, I've been a big fan of them. I think that the moniker ALSP, I'm sorry that it still persists. That's emblematic of the legal mindset and culture. Anything that is not traditional is an alternative. Read, not quite as good, but it's there.
Including the pricing.
Exactly. I don't think that they have the answer because I don't think that there's any that has been able to do it at scale. I just don't think that they are a series of single point solutions, and I don't think that's the way we're going. I think we're in an age of integration. Let's put the ALSPs aside, and in terms of other options, look, I think that you need capital, you need scale, you need expertise, you need tech chops. And when I say tech chops, I remember writing an article probably about 10 years ago saying law is not ready for Amazon, is Amazon ready for law? And the thesis of the article was that I foresaw that within the next period of years, it was entirely possible that a Microsoft or an Amazon who had already made inroads into the legal industry might decide that without ever engaging in the practice of law, they could basically transform it. I would not rule that out, nor would I rule out the possibility that a very large consultancy, like maybe Accenture is one that comes to mind. There are others who I think might be able to collaborate with people with great legal expertise to create this sort of thing. I think the two words that come to mind, Michael, are strategic partnerships. Again, look to business. Business has really, I think, pushed strategic partnerships in ways that law couldn't even conceive of, where competitors sometimes are strategic partners. This is something that I think we're going to see in law, and I don't think it's going to be driven by traditional lawyers, nor do I think that ancillary services that are led by partners from the same firms are necessarily going to do the trick. And again, I think you have to look to capital, you have to look to mindset, you have to look to alignment with business. And for all these reasons, I think that it is most likely, in my opinion, that the people who are really going to transform the industry are going to be presently ancillary or aligned with or the clients of the industry, and they will leverage the legal expertise of a handful of people who really understand the idiosyncrasies of the legal industry. And that would be what I would envision as the most likely scenario.
Interesting. You remember, and you alluded to this, when you said people want their money. They don't want to know who's right. They actually don't want to even know how many claims there are and grounds to put your claims on. They just want their money back. And this is how the platforms like Amazon or eBay at the time disrupted legal more than people could see because there were no claims coming out of that. Remember the small claims initiative in the US and people building out these sort of like mediation online court systems where people were hoping that people would go to after their e-commerce disputes and basically get their claims resolved. But the result is that there were some exceptions where this actually did happen, like people got relief after Hurricane Katrina, things like that. But
Right.
most people were just happy in getting their money back from Amazon, and Amazon was happy that they could provide a good like rating or scoring back to their vendors and sellers on the platform, and the triangle of trust got solved without any lawyers involved because like people
Exactly.
like it's a fun,
Exactly.
like technology made that happen. But you had transparency on price, you had transparency of services, and all that people wanted was the trust in the system that they could trust the ratings on Amazon or eBay that this was actually correct. So I'm 100% with you on that. But there's not really a but. I'm actually with you on that. In the area of consumer law, I think many areas people just don't care. But it feels to me that in the business law area, there are things at play that are sometimes merged with legal work, where the legal experts are sometimes either suffering from insecurity towards their own work where they're unsure how much they're actually doing. It's almost they underestimate their work of handling things, of providing services through just being there. By having always people refer to the trusted partner and trusted advisor in the sense of being there with advice. But I think what many lawyers do are a handler, a fixer, a doer, like picking up the phone and doing the work on behalf of the clients, just sorting documents, like making sure all the attachments are there, like that kind of work. And I feel that many lawyers underestimate how much of that they're actually doing, that it goes beyond the legal advice. And I have doubts to the extent that clients are ready to insource all of that. At least in my experience so far, people are maybe looking to a full service of people doing that, and maybe lawyers will learn through GenAI how much of that they're actually doing, like the handling, the fixing, the actually non-legal, almost consulting and handling work.
Then it begs the question, Michael, let's just assume that they do that. They're certainly not going to be doing it at $1,000 an hour first year associate rates.
Agreed with you. Yes, but then also these people are creative. But again, like this is time will tell. You're right. This is where the model will change and we will go to some box stuff. But this is also me who just literally signed an SOW 2 hours ago where we are going to do some implementation work for a customer where it's unclear of how much work it's actually going to be. And that's like it. Like we will settle on an hourly basis of integration work.
Yeah, Michael, one other thing I will say that you mentioned about legal work and they're doing things that are not legal work. I think we're in a period now, and I'm curious if you agree with me, where what is legal work is is more open to question than anything else. I look to the UK and how they have reduced legal work to basically 6 tasks. Everything else, according to the SRA, can be done by people who don't necessarily have legal training. So I think we're in a period now where we should not be hung up by traditional notions of what is or is not legal work. I think we have to re-examine that, just as I think we have to re-examine what is the purpose or role of a lawyer in an AI era business environment and society. Everything is changing. And these are big questions, as I said before, that go well beyond legal, even beyond business. Even if you want to carry it to its extreme, we say to ourselves, what is it that differentiates human beings from machines in this era? And I think it goes down from there. I think we're in a time of just extreme and convergent change. And I think we have to accept that. And I think we have to really imagine what is it that the legal function can do that is going to create value and create confidence and be able to be maybe able to read the signals and to be a bit predictive. We don't know the future, we can't predict it, but we are, I think, able to maybe use some of the many tools in the shed that you refer to be able creatively to look at around the curve and say, okay, what's the best we can do to prepare our clients?
Okay, I agree. You mentioned the mind shift a couple of times. And also, you mentioned this in your recent article. Good one. You give 20 points, very concrete ones, to what people should keep in mind in that. And in the same way, you also give in your article on the changing model for law firms, you also give very clear advice to the leaders in law firms or the partners of tomorrow, the partners of today that are still shaping the firm. What is the top three things that somebody who's listening to this and who's making a career in law that they should start doing tomorrow?
Okay. And then I'll answer that. And then I'll tell you the one thing that I would tell what I would tell the partners of firms to do. So for someone starting out in a legal career, I would say the following: do your best to drown out the hype. You have just, not only have you not won the lottery, but you've lost all your money by putting your bet on legal. I don't see that at all. But I do see three pieces of advice. I would say be curious. And by curiosity, I would mean be informed. To understand what your career might look like, you have to understand not only those people who currently are using your services, but what are the drivers that are influencing their changing views of everything, including when do I use lawyers, what kind of lawyers do I need, etc. I think the second is that too often legal careers were very much linear affairs. You either go into academia, you go into government service, or some form of public service, which unfortunately today I think is not an option for a lot of people because of the student debt that they have, or you go into a law firm, or maybe today in-house. But today, I would say that legal careers are no longer the linear affairs that they were when I was a baby lawyer.
Choose one.
And I never chose it anyway. It wasn't an option, but I didn't choose what was on the menu. And if it could be done 50 years ago, imagine how much easier it is to do now. For example, I would be looking at what other skills or passions do I have apart from my legal career. And I would look for ways to marry that. I did that 50 years ago. I was very interested in creativity and creative things. And it was, how do I reconcile the creativity with the very prescribed notions of what it meant to be a lawyer? So I would say, and the third thing I would say is to being curious and looking at applying your legal training and marrying it with other things that you're interested and passionate about. I would say you really have to be informed beyond just the industry. Remember, the industry is the tag along to its clients. I think, and so I would be really looking to the macroeconomic forces, the geopolitical forces, take a wider view of your profession. And I think that will really, I think, better prepare you for where things are apt to be going. And just consider the fact that you have many different possibilities. Don't allow the legal industry to pigeonhole you into just one of a couple of different coops. There are many out there, but you have to have that mindset of looking at it that way. And to law firm leaders, and I was telling one of them just last night, you have to have a strategy. Just looking for improvement in different areas, that is not going to be the solution to what's going on in the marketplace. All these things are interconnected. You have to have a strategy, and you have to be able to articulate it very clearly and very authentically. And I think unless you have that, all the rest is frankly a load of rubbish.
Okay. I fully agree with the strategy, although this is the kind of issue with today's times, is that people sometimes think they get blindsided by the change and there's like in the headlight and basically wait for the storm to go away to then actually have a strategy. But I think people have to get used to build strategy while things are constantly changing. That's the whole point about having that strategy. Like you need to have a strategy by going through choppy waters that are constantly different.
I wouldn't just say, what kind of technology do I need? I wouldn't just say, what kind of talent do I need? What kind of marketing do I need? All these things are interconnected, as Michael. I would look to what is my law firm now? And what is it that clients really want my law firm to be? Can I be that what they want it to be? Or do I have to make some changes to what it is now? And I think that is the kind of approach that time after time the most successful businesses have done. And you have to have a strategy that is not only holistic, that is looking to connect all these seemingly disparate pieces, dare I say mosaic, and then you're going to have to be able to articulate that clearly and I think authentically and honestly to the people in the organization. Because let's be honest about it, not everybody is going to be capable of making the kinds of changes and adaptation that will be required.
I want to close with one last question on you, because you mentioned something interesting. You said, look at the clients, don't look at legal. Don't be so legal focused, but have a view of how your clients change. And I see at the horizon something forming that is something very different than we have seen before. It is basically the clients getting transformed at a much faster rate than before because people are rebuilding companies there as well. There are roll-up plays where people buy service businesses to bundle them together to new types of businesses with AI at the center with better KPI structures. You have people basically shelving companies, people like doing spin-offs, like what is going on in the market where the money is actually being made and people don't actually think about legal. This will be the afterthought. After this whole transformation has started to be more stable, people will think about how do we solve our legal insurance consulting needs in that area. And this is going to be transformative for many of the legal advisors around there. So I think looking at the clients is the most important advice of all, because this is where the change is going to be, and you can do nothing about that, right? This is where you're
Right.
passive. I don't know how you see that shaping, but I think as a lawyer here, you really have to be more client-centric and more focused than ever.
Yeah, I've long said that legal transformation is a business story. The transformation of legal is not happening organically.
Right.
It's not happening internally. It is basically being directed by its clients. And to give you a specific case in point, 3 years ago, something that was very significant, I think, that wasn't really much covered in the legal press was, for the first time, in-house proportion of total legal spend eclipsed law firms. And I think that's significant because it is more of a palliative than it is a solution to the bigger problem. But it has been promoted more efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the next step is going to be, because business is putting more pressure on its in-house legal teams than ever before, it's basically saying to them, look, you figure it out. And if your supply chain isn't figuring it out, then we're holding you responsible. And I think that ultimately is going to result in a need on the part of in-house legal teams to, I think, get over the knee-jerk response of, okay, go to the law firm. And I think there's a pent-up market demand for something that is new, that is safe hands, that is scalable. And I think we're going to see it emerge within the next couple of years at scale.
Interesting. I believe that too. Actually, this is going to be the biggest change. Yeah, curious how we weather that storm. Mark, I'm sure you will have some points on that. Maybe we revisit this one day later. For today, I thank you a lot for your time and for your insights.
It's been my pleasure, Michael.
Take care.
Great to see you again.